Hello everybody, to be determined later here, bringing you the second episode in my series about theory crafting. Excuse me. Apologies that this one is so late. I had a friend over yesterday and they're going away for a long time after this event, so that day was pretty busy. I will still try to get an episode out tomorrow, Wednesday, that being an opinion piece. So this is episode 2 of my theory crafting series. And in this episode, I plan on covering Tear of the Goddess and its upgrades, Archangel Staff, and Mana Mune, and what characters they can work on that perhaps aren't very popular for the item amongst most players. So first, I'm going to talk about why I think Tear of the Goddess works on the current common Tear of the Goddess characters, that being, I believe, Anivia, Jace, Kha'Zix, Kassadin, Ryze, Nidalee, and then maybe there's some others, not sure. Yorick, that's a big one, though most people don't play Yorick nowadays. So, why does Tear of the Goddess work on those characters? Well, first, I would like to remind you guys a little bit about how Tear of the Goddess works. It gives 250 base mana, some mana regen, I can't remember off the top of my head how much, and its unique passive is that every time you cast a spell or use up mana, you will gain 4 mana, up to a maximum of 750 bonus mana, and that effect has a 3-second cooldown. However, for some of the examples that I'm going to be using, I'm going to be taking into account the fact that that cooldown is actually not always applied. Some spellcasts will, at certain times ignore that cooldown. I haven't been able to figure out why this is, or if it's something consistent that you can, some consistent way that you can reduce it or cause it to be ignored. However, this seemingly irregular, seemingly random bypassing of the cooldown will allow some of these examples to be much more viable, and generally it allows a lot of these examples of currently very popular Tear of the Goddess picks to be more viable. For example, if a Nidalee jumps forward and then swipes, sometimes that will give her 2 stacks on Tear of the Goddess. So, anyway, when it upgrades, and by upgrade I mean when you build a Tear of the Goddess into either the Archangel Staff or Mana Mune, it will become another item with a unique, I believe, active or toggle. Well, yeah, one case is inactive and the other is a toggle. Once that item reaches the maximum stacks of mana on it. For Archangel Staff, which is the ability power-based upgrade from Tear of the Goddess, at full mana stacks, that being the 250 base plus the 750 from, Tear of the Goddess, it will become Seraph's Embrace, which has a unique active that shields the character for, I believe, 25% of their current mana, or perhaps 20%. Again, these are numbers that I do not have just off the top of my head. However, it is a very significant shield based on current mana. It's very good for soaking up, for example, initiation in a fight. The other upgrade is Mana Mune, which is an attack damage based upgrade. And at maximum stacks, it will transform into Muramana, which has a unique toggle, which causes all single target abilities or auto attacks from the character with Muramana to deal 3% of their current mana in extra physical damage. So what makes Tear of the Goddess good on certain characters? Well, let's take the character that probably fits Tear of the Goddess the best out of all of the characters in League of Legends, and that is Ryze. So there are a number of different reasons that he scales very well, or that he does very well with Tear of the Goddess and both of its upgrades. The first reason is that he scales off of maximum mana. All of his abilities will deal damage based on his maximum mana. So obviously if you have more mana from Tear of the Goddess, you will get more damage, even if you have not upgraded it into either of its normal damage upgrades. This makes Tear of the Goddess extremely efficient on Ryze. A mere 750 gold can give you up to 67 extra damage on some abilities. I believe one of his abilities has 6.7% maximum scaling, or maximum mana scaling. So yeah, that's a very good pickup on him for that reason, but aside from that, Ryze's Q has a roughly 3-second cooldown, which synergizes very well with the Tear of the Goddess cooldown, which is exactly 3 seconds. Now, the final reason that Tear of the Goddess is so good on Ryze is applies to both of its upgrades. First of all, if you go to the ability power side and choose Seraph's Embrace, the active will make him tankier, and usually he is used as a late game ability power bruiser. And it will give you ability power, which Ryze also scales with on all of his damage abilities. Now, if you go with Manamune, which is actually, I believe, the much more common choice nowadays for Ryze. The attack damage, obviously, he does not scale with at all. He gains no attack speed from any of his abilities. He gains no critical chance. Nothing of that sort that would make attack damage by itself very useful. However, its active is what is really good on him. Because its active uses a percent of current mana, and Ryze is going to build mana anyway, already that's going to do a lot of damage on each auto attack in physical damage. But at the same time, Ryze has 2 single target abilities, that being his Q and W. So even when he's not auto attacking, even when he's spamming his spells, which is what Ryze players usually do, he's going to be doing a lot of extra physical damage with that Manamune, and that is going to bypass some of the magic resistance that some people may have built in an attempt to counter him. And so those are all just reasons why Tear of the Goddess is core on Ryze. Now, each of these individual reasons is also applicable on some other characters. I do not believe there's any other character in the game that has all of these reasons applicable. Okay, one example is Blitzcrank, who scales off of maximum mana with his shield and gets easy stacking with his ultimate passive, which causes a random enemy near him to be struck with lightning once every 3 seconds, I believe. However, only one of the upgrades truly synergizes with Blitzcrank, and that is Seraph's Embrace. It gives him a bunch of ability power, which his Q, his Rocket Grab, and his ultimate, which I forget the name of, they both scale off of ability power. I believe his Q has a 1-to-1 ratio. I do not know the ratio on his ult. However, the main reason that Seraph's synergizes well with him is because Blitzcrank's shield passive is already based on current mana, and then if you stack that with the Seraph's Embrace, when you're at full mana, you're going to have a massive shield, which can be very good for baiting, or just generally giving you a lot of extra effective health. Now, finally, I'm going to go on to another very meta Tear the Goddess choice that who has really only one reason that they build Tear the Goddess, and that is easy stacking, and that applies to Nidalee. Now, the reason that Tear the Goddess is good on people, or one of the reasons that some of you might be thinking right now, is people that are mana hungry, like Nidalee. However, there are a lot of people that are very mana hungry, but cannot stack the Tear of the Goddess very easily. For example, maybe a Tristana. You're not going to build Tear of the Goddess on Tristana because you can't stack it. It's going to take forever to stack. Same with Warwick. That's why if you wanted mana regen on those characters, you would probably get a Chalice of Harmony, but at the same time, very few people are going to be building Tristana AP, and even those who build Tristana AP probably aren't going to be building a Chalice of Harmony. I don't know why I would say that for AP Tristana, and perhaps for maybe a middle lane Warwick, though I wouldn't recommend going middle lane Warwick because he lacks range. Chalice of Harmony would be good at them. So I'm going to say that being mana hungry in itself is not a reason that is sufficient for building Tear the Goddess. So anyway, Nidalee, when she uses her ultimate to transform into Cougar form, she can jump every, I believe, 3.5 seconds without cooldown reduction, probably. And spamming that, by the way, it costs no mana, which is another reason why it's really great for stacking. But because of the cooldown and because of the lack of mana cost on that jump, that allows her to stack Tear of the Goddess up very quickly. Now, I'm going to make a statement here that perhaps not all of you will agree with, and that is that Tear of the Goddess should be built if it can be stacked efficiently, and additionally that it is very cost-effective, which I don't think anyone can disagree with the cost efficiency of the Tear of the Goddess and its upgrades. I do believe that some people could argue against the stacking reason. So anyway, I think that if someone can stack it up and get it to full stacks fairly quickly, that will allow them to get quite a large power spike, and it's going to be worth it. So here are some characters that I think could theoretically build it just based off of cooldowns. First of all is Sivir, whose Ricochet has a 3-second cooldown at maximum rank. Second would be Vayne, who has a 2-second cooldown on her Tumble at maximum rank. Actually, I think first I should debunk perhaps why these are not built on some characters, or on these characters. For Sivir, the reason that you wouldn't build a Tear of the Goddess is because, first of all, your W, your bouncing shot, I can't believe I've already forgotten it. I already had the page up. Anyway, that has a 3-second cooldown at maximum rank, but you're going to be maxing her Q instead for the damage in lane. So that W isn't going to have that 3-second cooldown for most of the game, or for a lot of the early portions of the game where you want to get a lot of stacks on your Tear of the Goddess. Additionally, it requires minions or champions to be nearby for you to land an auto attack to reset the cooldown of that ability. And if there are no minions around, then the cooldown is going to be much longer because you're not immediately dispelling the buff of the whole on next auto attack thing. And this is the same case with Vayne's Tumble. If you do not hit anything with Vayne's Tumble, it has an 8-second cooldown because the buff lasts for 6 seconds and the cooldown at max rank is 2 seconds. This is the same with Blitzcrank. However, Blitzcrank is passive and as such is not something that you really need to actively use, and you know, as long as you're in lane, it's gonna be doing it already. You're not gonna have to push the wave. You're not gonna, well, you are gonna push the wave, but you're not gonna have to, I guess, push it in the same way. I mean, I still think it's very limited, but you know, one of the things that makes up for that is his synergy with Seraph's Embrace and his mana barrier passive. Another example of someone who needs minions in order to do their mana stacking is Trundle, whose Chomp has a 4-second cooldown, and Trundle gets a lot of attack speed usually and such from his Frozen Domain, especially up to 80% bonus attack speed with that. And because of that, I think that applying that on-hit effect of a Muramana would be very effective. The only thing, as I've said, is that it requires minions. Another example, someone else who gains a lot of attack speed and has a 3-second cooldown on one of his abilities at max rank is Jax, and that ability is Power, which makes his next basic attack, or Leap Strike, deal bonus magic damage. And so, as I've said, that's that requires minions, and so it's going to have actually a 13-second cooldown if you do not hit anything with it, because the buff on next auto attack or leap strike lasts 10 seconds. So now I'm going to go on to a couple of characters that I think could legitimately work and do not require minions in order to stack their Tear of the Goddess very effectively. The first one is Cassiopeia, and Cassiopeia is not a very commonly played champion nowadays. And when people do play her, they do sometimes build Tear of the Goddess. Sometimes instead they will choose to build the Chalice of Harmony. But her Noxious Blast, her Q, has a 3-second cooldown at all ranks. And additionally, her passive reduces the mana cost of all her abilities the more she spams. So if she just spams her Q, it's going to cost pretty low mana and stack her Tear of the Goddess up very effectively. And her upgrades for it are both, or could both be quite good, I think. Seraph's Embrace would make her more tanky, which could compensate for the fact that she has no escapes. Not even, well, I mean, she does have a movement speed boost on her her Q, but that's 15% to 25%. That's not very good, and you have to hit someone with it. Additionally, Muramana, I think, could work well because her Twin Fang, her E, which is a lot of her damage late game, is single target and thus would apply Muramana's passive. She would eat up her mana even more quickly than she already does, but she would be doing a lot more damage, and it would be physical damage on top of the heavy magical damage that she's already going to be doing. Another one that does not necessarily need minions and additionally has probably some of the most efficient scaling or stacking of Tear of the Goddess in the game, outside of people with free transforms such as Jace, is Ashe. Now Ashe is another one that's not played very much generally, but there are a couple of reasons why I think that she can work very well with Tear of the Goddess, and one of those, I think the main one, is her Frost Chop, which costs 8 mana per attack at all ranks. It slows her target for 2 seconds. It's a toggle, and it has no cooldown. So the reason I think that this is great is because, first of all, if you use up that 8 mana on one attack every 3 seconds, that's going to be 4 mana lost, and then her regen should recover that 4 mana lost over the next 3 seconds. Additionally, as I've said before, that with the Tear of the Goddess cooldown not always applying, this works really well with her Frost Shot when she's perhaps pushing a wave or auto-attacking an enemy several times. That'll give her more than one stack every 3 seconds. And then when she doesn't have anything to attack, if you are maxing her volley ability, it will have a 4-second cooldown at maximum rank. So with those, she can have either incredibly efficient in combat, what am I saying? In combat stacking, or less efficient, but still very worthwhile stacking outside of combat with her volley. So to recap, I'm going to make a little bit of a list of the, I guess, 2 tiers of unconventional Tear of the Goddess champions. And those are going to be, those 2 tiers are going to be those that require enemy units in order to stack their Tear of the Goddess, and those who do not require enemy units in order to stack their Tear of the Goddess. So, for those who do need to be in combat, those would be Evelynn, Jax, Pantheon, Sivir, Soraka, Trundle, Twisted Fate, and Vayne. For those that would not need to be in combat to stack their Tear of the Goddess effectively, those are Ashe, Karma, Kog'Maw, Singed, Syndra, and Udyr. So that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll be building Tear of the Goddess on some other people now. I think I'm probably the most fond of the Ashe and Pantheon Tear of the Goddess builds from this list. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. I've been to be determined later, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow for an opinion piece.